come now to the final passage in the tractate Sanhedrin. We began, thank God, from the beginning of the chapter, as we finally conclude the final chapter of Sanhedrin as Kufyud Gimel Beis 113b. We'll read and translate the words themselves, as we always do. And then, as promised, I'm going to share with you a very deep and beautiful insight from the Rebbe on these concluding words of the chapter and its message to us. So let's get right into it. We are 3 lines from the top of the page on 113b, Kufyud Gimel Beis. Second to last word. First, the Gemara, as it does, quotes the Mishnah, the relevant passage of the Mishnah, upon which the Gemara is going to comment. Says the Mishnah like this: the verse reads with respect to the law of the Ir Nidachas. Right, the Mishnah was talking about the law of the Ir Nidachas, the castaway city, the city that's been redirected and diverted to idol worship, and the laws pertaining to that city, how it qualifies and what's to be done with the city to destroy the property. The people have to be judged and condemned to capital punishment. And then, nothing of the city shall remain with you. That's the final verse, the final word on that law in the Torah. And nothing of the leftovers should be left in your hands. It should all be laid to waste. That verse is in Deuteronomy chapter 13, verse 18. And the Mishnah commented, so long as the wicked are in this world, there is God's anger and wrath in the world. And then the Mishnah there concluded, let's just go back and look at it. The Mishnah there concluded, if the wicked are lost in the world, then God's anger is also removed from the world. Now the first thing the Gemara does is asks, who specifically are the wicked about which we say that so long as these people are in the world, God's anger is in the world. Rav Yosef says, Ganvi, those are thieves. Tan Rabban, our sages taught. Now the Gemara, as it often does, introduces a brisa, Mishnaic age text that didn't make it to the final cut in the Mishnah, which is often an elaboration of the Mishnah itself, as we've discussed a number of times. And there, the Mishnaic age text, this brisa reads, Tesefta reads, Rasha bal olam, when a wicked arrives in this world, Charayin bal olam, this brings God's anger to the world. Shnemar, as the verse reads, this is a verse in Mishle Yudches Gimel, Proverbs chapter 18, verse 3. Bevoy Rasha, when the wicked arrives, Ba Gam Buz, there also comes, Buz I think is translated as anger or scorn. And then the verse continues, Vim Kaloin, and with disgracefulness, Cherpa, there comes insult. Okay. The Mishnaic age text, the Tesefta continues. Rasha avad min ha'olam, the wicked is removed from this world. Taiva bal ha'olam, this brings goodness to the world. Shenemar, as the verse reads, Ube'ibur d'shayim rina, and with the removal of wickedness, of wicked people, there is joy. And then that's the verse the Gemara cites, the Brisa cites, to prove this idea that when the wicked leave, there's joy. And this is again from Mishle chapter 11, verse 10. Then the Mishnaic age text continues, Tzaddik nifter min ha'olam, when the righteous pass on from this world, Ra bal ha'olam, wicked comes to this world. Bad comes to this world, not wicked, sorry, bad comes to this world. Remember, the verse reads, and this is a verse in Isaiah chapter 57, verse 1, Tzaddik avad, the wicked has been lost, the righteous has been lost, the ein ish sal nalev, and no one takes it to heart, v'anshei chesed nasafim, and the men of kindness have been ingathered, meaning they die, be'ein mavin, and nobody understands, ki mipnei hara nesaf tzaddik, it's because of the wicked that the tzaddik, that the righteous has died. As Rashi explains, before bad comes to this world, God makes it that the tzaddik should pass away, she shouldn't live to experience the bad. And no one's taking this to heart, that the tzaddik died, and no one realizes that it's because there's negativity in the world. And then here's the final line of the tractate, Tzaddik bal ha'olam, the righteous comes to the world. Toiv ba'olam, this brings goodness to the world. Remember, as the verse reads, Zeh yenachamenu mimasenu. This, referring, the verse is actually in Genesis chapter 5, verse 29. It's a reference to why Noah is called Noah. The word Noah is Hebrew's noyach, which comes from the word nachem, to be comforted. And Zeh yenachamenu mimasenu, this will be our comfort from the actions of etzem yedenu, and from like the badness that happened from our hands, and that the world has gone to a bad way. So you see that when tzaddik arrives, it brings goodness and removes all the bad and comforts one from the bad. So this is the end of the tractate. Here comes Rebbe's beautiful comment. And I'm not going to get into the whole thing. It's a very beautiful, long dissertation, dissecting every single word of this passage here, comparing the Brisa to the Mishnah, and where the Brisa elaborates on the Mishnah, which is ordinary, right? The Mishnaic H text that didn't make it to the final Mishnah, which the Gemara often quotes, which we talked about here, is more elaborate than the Mishnah. That's understood. But then there are some changes, and Rebbe discusses that as well. And I'm not going to get into all of that, but I just want to share one essential theme of the Rebbe's dissertation here on this last passage, and especially the part that has relevance to us. And the Rebbe begins with, why does the Gemara first ask, who are the wicked? The entire tractate, Sanhedrin, discusses the laws of the court. And earlier there's a discussion on a wicked person who can't testify in court. And there the Talmud qualifies who qualifies as a wicked. So what's the Gemara's question? Who is the wicked here? And then the Gemara answers, the thief. Why the thief? Aren't we talking about Ir Nidachas here? Aren't we talking about the castaway city which was busy with idol worship? So why is the Gemara asking who are the wicked? And then we're answering, it's a thief specifically. What's unique about thievery that they're the wicked people that bring God's wrath and not any other sin? And why not idol worship? And the Rebbe cites to other commentaries and kind of gleans from some of them, but then adds his own insight. And the sum total is as follows. The verse quoted to tell us that so long as the wicked are here in this world, there's anger in the world, comes in the closing verse in the Torah describing the law of the Ir Nidachas, which was, nothing left of the city shall be in your hand. Which means the verse is already talking after the wicked have got their punishment. Those who have served idols in the Ir Nidachas are no longer. They've already got their punishment. And yet the Mishnah goes on to say that so long as the wicked are in the world, there's anger in the world. Well, didn't we just get rid of the wicked people? Didn't we just get rid of the people who worship idols? So who are the wicked people that are still here? Furthermore, the Mishnah says that so long as the wicked are here, there is God's anger. And not so long as wickedness is here. And not so long as bad behavior is here. It says wicked people. And therefore we have to find some sort of wicked behavior that has this continuing effect, in that it's not just a question of, I once did something bad, so that brought God's anger, but even after the bad action is done, God's anger still remains, because so long as the wicked are here, God's anger is here. So there has to be a sin that has a continual effect. And this is the Rebbe's thievery is perfectly this exemplifies these two characters. Number one, wickedness, thievery itself, specifically Geneva, as opposed to Gzela. There's two types of stealing in Jewish law. There's Geneva and there's Gzela. Geneva means one who steals but does so clandestinely. So he sneaks into one's home and no one's watching and steals. Whereas Gzela is someone who in broad daylight robs somebody. And elsewhere, the Talmud tells us that in some degree the clandestine thievery is worse, because the one who does it brazenly, openly, says, I don't care about God watching me when I'm stealing, and I don't care about human beings watching me when I'm stealing. But someone who steals clandestinely, secretly, then what he's saying is, God I'm not scared of, but men I am scared of. So there's a sort of insult, as it were, to God's providence, in that he gives higher ranking to human providence, to human observation, because he's doing it, he wants to hide, he's sneaking into someone's home and stealing, but he doesn't give that same respect to the fact that God's watching him. So that's number one. There's this audacity to thievery, in denying the truth that God is watching everything doing, and therefore it's very similar to idol worship, and therefore it's the kind of sin that would bring God's wrath. But moreover, the stealing has what's called a pulun imsheches, a continued action. So long as he hasn't paid up that which he stole, every single moment he is still actively stealing. And therefore it's not just a question of that moment that he stole, there's God's anger. But that action continues until he rectifies it. Now these two components in stealing, that stealing is a demonstration that he's insulting and not taking into consideration that God's watching him. And number two, the fact that it has a continuous action, and that every single moment he hasn't returned that object that he stole, it's as if he's stealing it again and again and again. The act of stealing continues. To some degree, it's true of every single sin. Every single sin is in some way me saying, God's not watching me. Or, yes, God's in charge of the world and he doesn't want me to do certain things, but right now I want my space. It's a similar thing in a subtle way, but it's still there. So every sin has this thievery element, which is kind of like idol worship element. Saying, God runs the world, yeah, but I do what I want. Like the thief, who doesn't consider the fact that God's watching him. And likewise, even though it's true that the moment that I stop sinning, I'm not sinning. The sin is not here. But I still owe it, as it were, to do Teshuva. And therefore, until the moment I've done Teshuva, I still carry the burden of what that sin brings with it. So these two qualities of the sin of stealing is replicated in a more subtle and nuanced way in every single sin. In that A, the act of sinning is a declaration of not considering the fact that God's presence is here and he's watching what I'm doing. And B, it has this continuous effect until I do my Teshuva. Just like the stealing, it has continuous stealing until I've returned the lost object, the stolen object. And that explains the Rebbe as a segue between the Mishnah and the Gemara, and the Brisa. The Mishnah, each text with the Gemara quotes. First, the Talmud explains our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says, so long as the wicked are in this world, there's God's wrath in the world. That's talking about thief. Stealing. That's the quintessential mitzvah, the quintessential sin that has this continuous effect of denying God's truth. And therefore, in the Mishnah it says, Charoin af, God's anger, but it adds the word af, which has an added element of anger. Af means a nose, literally, but the anger of the nose, it's so angry that, there's like smoke coming out of his nose. That's the expression. It's a terrible anger. But then the Brisa doesn't use the word af, it just says Charoin, God's anger, without saying af. So it's a lesser degree of anger. But it's a continuation to the Mishnah. Meaning to say, every sin, not stealing, is a minor version of stealing, in that it also has some of that quality, in that the moment of sin you're denying God's truth that he's watching you. And number two, until you've done Teshuva, you're still carrying that sin with you, even though it's not as egregious as stealing, where every single moment it's as if you're actively stealing. Now if that's the case, as there that we can say, when the Talmud concludes that when the tzaddik arrives, goodness arrives, and the anger is removed, it's not just a question of this person dying or this person being born, but it's also about the person himself. The moment he stops carrying those sins with him, he returns the thing he stole, or in terms of every other sin, he does Teshuva, he removes the divine wrath, as it were, that the burden of a sin that he still carried brings with it. And from here, the Rebbe tells us we have a beautiful lesson on the preciousness of time. One could think, I did bad things. Okay. I stopped doing those bad things, and that's good. But I have to do Teshuva right this second. I'll get into the mood, I'll do the right thing, and I'll do my Teshuva. Comes this Gemara and says, hold on a second. Every moment that you delay the Teshuva, you're still carrying with it the negativity of the sin, and therefore God's wrath, as it were. This negative divine energies is being kept in this world so long as I haven't done my Teshuva. And every single moment is precious. And that's the conclusion of the tractate on this positive note. That the moment you do Teshuva, that very second that one stops being classified as a wicked person, lets lets go of those bad behaviors and becomes, that tzaddik becomes righteous and that he's done his Teshuva. In that very moment, he switches the entirety of the world. The divine energy beforehand that he was holding on to was negative, and the moment he switches, it brings goodness into this world. That's further highlighting for us the preciousness of every single moment, and not just, okay, I sinned once upon a time and that's it, and I'll do Teshuva when the time comes. No. Right away. Every moment is precious. Because in every moment, I'm either carrying that negative behavior, which brings with it divine wrath, or I'm switching to tzaddik, to bring in God's goodness and kindness into this world. And with that, Hadron Allah Kol Yisrael, we will return to you. Chapter Kol Yisrael, Yesh Lehem Perek Chelek, V'Silkala, and with this we conclude Masechta Sanhedrin, Chapter Sanhedrin. So, L'chaim and Mazel Tov to all those who have been with us since the beginning of this tractate, almost a year ago, maybe even over a year ago. We've spent quite a bit of time on this tractate, on this chapter, and I thank you for coming along with this journey. And I very much appreciate the feedback and the comments that we get from many of you, either directly to me or commenting on the videos, wherever the various different places it's posted. And we look forward, God willing, in our next class, we're going to be looking at the last tractate in Masechta Yuma, in tractate Yuma. Yuma, as I mentioned in one of the previous classes, Yuma is a tractate that deals with Yom Kippur. Most of it, the first, I think it's 7 chapters, discusses the procedure of the high priest in the Holy of Holies back in the day when there was a temple, and all the things he had to do, a very busy schedule, and a fascinating discussion. But we're going to look at the last chapter, which discusses first the laws of Yom Kippur that still pervade till today, the laws of fasting, the laws of not wearing leather shoes, and the various different restrictions we have on Yom Kippur. So it has practical relevance to our day, and we'll go through that together with, God willing, the Code of Jewish Law, specifically from the founder of Chabad, the Alter Rebbe, highlighting what the practical applications of the Talmud we're going to learn with respect to how one fasts in Yom Kippur, when one's allowed to break the fast, when one is sick, etc., etc. And then the tractate gets into a beautiful and deep discussion on Teshuva, the importance of Teshuva, manners in which a person can gain Teshuva, and that should be something that's also very inspiring to study, especially now as we just finished Shavuot, and the next upcoming holiday is Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, so kind of preparing for the next holiday, for the era of Teshuva for Elul, then Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which hopefully will be enhanced by the study of tractate Yuma, and I hope that you come along with us on this journey. Have a wonderful day.